My lord, excuse me, but may I have a moment of your time?
I'm sorry, my lady. I have no time to chat. I'm in a bit of a hurry.
I couldn't help but notice as you strolled in the market that you appear to be a man that can handle himself.
Well, yes, thank you for that, but as I said, I really must be going. We've only stopped in town for a few provisions.
But I need your help.
I'm afraid I just don't have time. I'm on a quest, you see. My comrades and I must take the seed of goodness and travel past the forlorn mountains and plant it in the righteous valley. Otherwise, the world will be plunged into darkness, and that's bad.
Please, it's my daughter. She's missing.
Well, actually, before we plant the seed, we have to descend into the caves of dismay to retrieve the magic potting soil of life.
Sir!
Not sure why that is. I have to ask the druid about that.
My lord, please, it's my daughter. I fear she's been kidnapped.
Kidnapped? Have you tried the town guard?
I can't go to them. They're known to be corrupt.
Oh, yes, they always are.
Please, my lord, you're my only hope.
A daughter, you say?
Yes.
All right, then. Lead the way, and we'll see about rescuing your daughter.
Welcome to Roleplay Geeks. I'm your host, Frank.
I'm your token hippie, John.
And I'm Jim, and I got it right this week.
This is Steve.
And this is Steve-O, a.k.a. the other Steve.
And this week we're going to talk a little bit about side quests. Now, side quests are something that I think we all have engaged in at some point or fashion, whether we realize it or not. And it's something that we don't really think about a whole heck of a lot. And the general notion, let's go ahead and define, I'm going to define side quests for me, and then everyone else can decide whether they agree or not. The basic idea behind a side quest is that you've got a campaign, a plot that is moving forward, and it's stepping through from point A to point B to point C and on through this story, okay? Along the way, you might have little side things that you do, and it's something I think we're fairly comfortable with in the concept of video games, but I'm not sure that we're as comfortable, I guess, in role-playing games and pen and paper role-playing games. I'm not sure it's something that we realize is happening a lot of the times. So we're going to talk a little bit about it. I'll kick off with the general idea. I use them a lot, to be honest with you. I have not very good at necessarily moving from point A to point B in my plots as a game master. And a lot of times I know where I want them to be. I don't know how to get them there. And I find side quests to be very helpful to help sort of maneuver things that allow the players to not run on rails so much and do what they want, yet kind of nudge them in the general direction that they need to go to get to point B. So I find side quests incredibly helpful for me. But what do you guys think?
What about, can you give me an example? I mean, sounds like you're still on the main quest if you're nudging us and just maybe adding a little something to it. To me, I think a side quest is more like something unrelated to the campaign, right?
That sounds right. Technically.
So there's an article on Inverse by Danny Paez, or Paez. I'm not exactly sure how you pronounce it. And
Danny,
I looked it up.
We're sorry.
I looked it up
Danny,
on his...
if you're listening.
Yeah. I looked it up on his About, and I looked it up on his Twitter, and I Google searched it, and there were two versions. So sorry, Danny. But he's got an article called How a Video Game Chore Became a Storytelling Technique for TV and Movies. And out of all the things that I read when I was researching it, I really liked what he had in here. And he's got this one section I'm going to read. Eventually, there will come a moment when a player does something the DM didn't anticipate. It's at these moments that the 1979 version of the Dungeons & Dragons Dungeon Master Guide suggests you just kind of wing it. And like that, the concept of impromptu side quest writing was born. And the quote from the DM's guide is, "The campaign might grow slowly, or it might mushroom. Be prepared for either event with more adventure areas, and the reasons for everything which exists and happens. This is not to say that total and absolutely perfect information will be needed, but a general schema is required. From this, you can give vague hints and ambiguous answers. It is no exaggeration to state that the fantasy world builds itself, almost as if the milieu, God, I hate that word, all those years of French, and I hate that word, actually takes on a life and reality of its own.
I use side quests for several things. I think Steven said it pretty well, and I think I do it the same way Frank does sometimes. I'll use them in several different cases, like with new players, with the kids. I use the typical rat in the basement quest, sort of to get them, to get experience with combat and something really simple that they can take out the rats, earn a little money, and get a sense for how combat's run. So that's probably the typical use for new players.
So,
and for you guys, there's like a couple others. Yeah, you got something to say about that?
No, I mean, how do you define? I get that. That's like a side quest. That's very good use of it. That's not the main thing. So, in other words, it's like first level character, you want to introduce someone to the game, to combat, to a little bit of role playing inside a town. Didn't the Dungeons and Dragons online have something similar? When you first rolled up, you had to go in a building and kill a couple giant rats or something?
Yeah, probably. That's the most common one, I think, in the history of role playing games, or at least D&D.
But now, when you're talking about winging it or doing something outside of the campaign, I would call that a random encounter.
Yeah, I mean, you can call it a random encounter, but I'll do it a little differently instead of a random encounter because I don't look at it that way. Like if the guys want to go a different direction, let's say they don't feel like going on the quest you're laying out for them. They don't see the hook, or they see the hook for the adventure for the next step of your main campaign, and they're not buying.
And Frank decides to ignore it.
Yes, which is typical. So he'll want to go somewhere else, so you let him. It's just on the fly, I'm building a side quest, and oftentimes I want that side quest to tie back into the main campaign at some point. So I'm building a side quest out with the intent of having something in that side quest contribute to the main campaign. But that lets them go off and do what they feel like doing for that particular game session. And then I do work out side quests, like the Traveler Adventure we're going through right now. I have like 5 different side quests that aren't necessary for the adventure, but if you guys decide to go on those side quests, they contribute to the adventure. And they're more about building out, giving opportunities for each of the characters to build out their particular character in a more robust way and add more to their personal stories.
The key is they are not necessary to the main objective of the game.
Correct. And you get an opportunity to kill the characters too, so that's a lot of fun.
Yay!
Just
death and dismemberment.
Yeah, to me, side quest is more or less, I think to really call it that, it has to be something planned. To me, winging it or taking it in a different direction, I don't know. That just doesn't feel like a side quest to me. But for instance, if I was running a campaign, and which I guess if we wanted to go back to the most recent one I did, Call of Cthulhu, each of you have pretty strong backstories. A side quest to me would be, Stephen exploring something that happened in the past, or something in the past comes back, but it's not related to maybe the main quest or campaign, sort of a story arc, if you want to put it in writing terms. You have your main plot, but then the individual characters would have story arcs, where they evolve and change, throughout the work. So, and I love winging stuff. I do it all the time. One of my best adventures ever was a Traveler adventure I literally made up on the spot. And one guy got off work, me and 2 other guys were playing. I'm running the game, and a guy got off work, and he came home from work. He was a roommate of one of the other guys, and I was like, yeah, man, go ahead and roll up a character. And then, he rolls up a character, and I weaved his entry into this thing seamlessly. It was a great adventure. It was a lot of fun. They loved it too. So, yeah. Traveler. I said traveler. We need to make a drinking game out of that.
We'll never make it through one of these episodes. We'll all be drunk off our asses.
No, I mean for the
15 minutes
listeners. We'll just make a.
We'll all sound like Jimmy.
Traveler.
Spoken like a true alcoholic, Jimmy.
And then Jimmy would start sounding, okay, well, let me ask you guys, what do you think about this
Could
point?
everyone please be serious?
We can't have a party of all Jimmys. It's just it doesn't work.
It's
Nothing
like
would ever
having,
get
like
done.
a D&D party of all barbarians. So
There you go. It just doesn't work.
What was that gibbering monster that we encountered with all the mouths? And that would be a gibbering Jimmy.
Mouther. Yeah.
Mouther.
Mouth.
Gibbering mouther.
I thought it was a Jimmy Mouther.
Jimmy Mouther?
Okay, so
A gibbering Jimmy mouther.
okay, so let me sort of. I think Steve raised an important issue because this is a meandering podcast. Apologies to those listening, but that. Where's the dividing line between a side quest and a random encounter? I think a random encounter is fairly straightforward. You know, it's one singular thing. At what point does that stretch into a side quest? And does a side quest require premeditation? Or can it just sort of happen on its own? What do you think?
That's easy. You're sleeping around a campfire. All of a sudden, you get jumped by ogres. Ogres come in. You fight them. They're dead. You go back to sleep. That would be a random encounter. And then
The side quest. I could
quest.
take that to a side quest.
Right.
Would be, where did these, what'd you say, ogres, where did they come from? Let's track them. Hey, you see tracks.
Or even more
you notice-
interesting enough, they have a note in their pocket says, grab these adventurers, bring them back to my cave alive.
Well,
Yeah,
hold on. As I stated first up, the difference between random encounter and side quest is pretty easy. That is an easy line to define.
Oh, that
That's
wasn't
not
what
the
you were
intro-
asking?
That wasn't what I was asking. Is my question was, at what degree does premeditation become critical to defining a side quest versus a random encounter or two?
I don't understand. It's just
Okay, if you wing it, is it a side quest? Or to be a side quest, it has to be something you've written before you sat down and played?
No. A quest.
Because Steve suggested that to be a side quest, it has to be premeditated.
No.
You have to have thought of it ahead of time.
You just have to have the quest part, a goal built into the thing beyond just that singular.
But is it a
combat
quest?
session.
Is it a quest that you've? So you're saying if you make it up in the spot, then it's still a side quest to your way of thinking.
Yeah, I just made up one. You know, you find a note in the ogre's thing that says, "Bring these guys back alive to my cave." There's your quest. Who did this? Why is it there? Rather than just, I killed a bunch of ogres, now I can go back to sleep.
In the original DM's guide, I think the main point is to be prepared to have something for your characters to do apart from the main quest. So the best way to do that is to prep yourself and have some things in mind. Especially, you know, if you're talking about in the beginning, at the genesis of all this in the 70s, you know, they expected you to follow a formula if you had a module. But if things were going to go off the rails, they wanted you to have the ability to fill in the gaps. Now, I think the way that we all play, because we're experienced and we have this breadth of knowledge, that it's easy for us to do a side quest that is completely off the cuff, that is made up on the spot, that provides some value for the player and may, depending on how we want to approach it, like Jimmy was saying, bring us back in some meaningful way to the main quest. So that's my addendum.
If I may interrupt for Steve-O here from what he was suggesting earlier, at what point is that just ad-libbing the quest?
But that's okay. That's fine.
No, I'm not saying, I'm not making a judgment call about it. I'm just asking. I'm asking if we're talking about side quests, that suggests that it is something distinctly different than quest, right?
Right, because it does not specifically or need to attach to the main quest. It is completely optional.
Right, but at what point is it? I'm trying to think how to articulate this well, since you get very bogged down in the semantics. But
Who, me?
yes, at what point is it just ad-libbing the quest as opposed to a side quest?
If I can interject, I think in any campaign, unless you're running a module and dungeon crawl type module, that every game master has to be ready to ad lib something, whether it's an NPC encounter, traveling from point A to point B. I mean, even if you roll up that random encounter while you're camping before you get to your main objective, I mean, you have to be able to, I think, creatively bring it to life. So I think there's always going to be that ad-libbing, winging it a little bit, and that's what makes it fun for the game master, at least for me.
Well, I think, Frank, you're kind of getting bogged down in the idea that of what Steve said earlier. Is that the winging it? You have to have either prepared or kind of winging it is a differentiation and stuff. I think really the thing about a side quest is that if it's not done, it does not detract or keep you from moving forward in the main quest. Any sort of side quest is completely optional, and it has no impact on the main quest. That's really the only thing it amounts to. Whether you come up with it off the fly, off the cuff, however you want to say it, or whether you wrote something out for them to do. As long as it doesn't really affect the main quest,
or is related to the main quest.
Right.
That would be a side quest.
Yeah.
Something completely different.
So I don't really think that's that much of an issue.
Yeah, I think going back to Jimmy's example of the ogres that attack, whether you have that encounter prepared or not, even though your main objective for the campaign's to rescue the princess or something, the characters can say, hey, do we want to follow those tracks back? Do we want to try and figure out what this note is? And if they don't, say, we better get going, she's in need of rescue. Or they say, heck yeah, let's go, let's figure out what this is. So it's totally unrelated. Doesn't have to tie into it. But would be interesting if once you get to the end of the ogre cave, one of the princess's guards was being held captive or something. But it wouldn't be necessary to the main plot.
At what point do you think that becomes a distinction with meaning to players? So I think it's easy to identify a side quest whenever I'm going to go dig for some gold based upon this note in an ogre's, satchel that has no relationship to rescuing the princess.
Do you dig around in ogre satchels often? I'm just curious.
Wherever you found the note. I mean, if you can see if the player can obviously see that has no relationship to what the point of the quest was, right? Then you can say, oh yeah, that's a side quest. But if you do the thing where you kind of fold it back in to the main quest, like, is it perceptible to the players that what they're engaged in is a side quest as opposed to just another piece of the main quest? And the reason I ask this question is that I think it's challenging, particularly with Jimmy more than anybody else, but to some extent, I think even with Steve-O, as a player, as me being a player to them as a GM, I'm not always clear that I'm not picking up on the hook. So, while it may be a joke that, oh, I don't follow the hook ever, it's not on purpose. Sometimes I just don't see the hook that they're laying down. I don't see it as a hook. So I end up going on a side quest, not realizing that it's a side quest.
See, I think we always just kind of assume you were just being contrarian.
I know, but that's not true. And many times, in most contexts, that's probably true. I am a contrarian by nature. But in gaming, honestly, most of the time, I didn't realize that's what I was supposed to do.
I'm
just
make
dumb.
it easier.
So
I'm just a dumb gamer, not
So
not
Frank,
a
in my
jerk.
defense, yeah, I actually wrote down. This is the bullet point I wrote down. The players lead you down a side quest because they either don't want to engage your hooks intentionally, or they just likely not to see it. So I mean, I left it open for the possibility you don't see them, because
in this
sometimes you
particular
think you're
case,
being obvious as a game master, and for you, you're being obvious, but not at all for the players, and that happens to
right?
me.
Because
Yeah.
you know the plot, so
Exactly.
you know that this is aside from the plot, not part of the plot.
And what I distinguish as a side quest is really, as a player, would be if the side quest has nothing to do with the main campaign. That's, as a player, that's what I would distinguish between the two. But as a game master, I look as a side quest as, one of those three kinds: a side quest that ties back into the campaign, a side quest that doesn't tie back into the campaign, and then as a third thing is that which is really could be either one of the first two, is that side quest that just jumps out because of several criteria have been met. One, you guys don't see the hook and want to go in a different direction. This other one, which I do a lot, is if I haven't built out the next regular part of the campaign quest and I need time to do that, I'll send you guys off on a side quest I make up with the seat of my pants. Maybe it ties back in, maybe it doesn't.
I call those tread water campaigns.
Yeah.
Quests. And I do that a lot too. I'm just like, okay, I know things need to happen. Let me just fake it until I figure out how to get us to the next part, because I don't know how to.
Tread water campaigns, trademark.
But don't
Frank
you?
Lafont.
I was going to ask you, is that what's going to happen Monday night?
Yes.
Just curious.
Yes, for sure.
Oh, okay.
That's what happened. That's what happened the session before the last session in my campaign. It was 100% a tread water.
The one you
quest.
said it was really important that all of us attend.
No. The whole campaign, I think it's important for everyone to attend. In this particular,
Well,
in this particular one. Now, the last session, it was plot point, but the one before that, which is essentially that the lake with the thing and the attacking and all that stuff, 100% tread water. In a literal
That's great.
sense, in this particular case, just because I didn't know what to do.
but the nice thing about a side quest, and John, I think you probably would agree with this, because often you seem to be the party leader that tells us where to, you often pick where we go and that sort of stuff when I'm a player. And, the nice thing, at least whether you're making it up on the fly or it's something you maybe have in the back of your mind, have a couple notes on, regardless of that, it gives the player a feeling of freedom, that they're not, no, you don't want to do that. Like if John says, I want to go down to the bar and see if I can find that guy that gave me that dirty look. You're going to have to wing that or something. But then maybe I'll have somebody run up in a starport and say, hey, can you help me real quick? My son, he's lost. That's a total side quest, and maybe it's a whatever, right?
Right.
So it gives a player, and if John says, I don't have time for that, or
Screw you, man. Go find your own kid.
you have to admit, when we play Traveler, go ahead and take a drink. Whenever we play Traveler, we all turn into a bunch of psychopaths.
Turn into?
Yeah, well,
Frank's good for that.
yeah.
John, too.
What do you mean?
I'm not a psychopath.
I'm always a
I'm not in this
psychopath.
campaign. These people tried to kill us in this last campaign, and then you're like, oh, you're getting to be a jerk because you're trying to kill them back. What? They tried to kill me first.
Oh, no, Frank. I'm talking about the part where we had the guy, the captive, and we agreed to let him go if he shared some information, and he had a bullet wound in his knee. And then as you were leaving him at his destination, you stuck your finger in the bullet wound and wallowed it around to make him be in pain before you left.
Yeah, that was on you.
That was only because I couldn't shoot him. I mean, but the thing is that is actually.
Let me drive that point home for you there, Steve-O. It's because I didn't shoot him.
Yeah, I'm not a psychopath. I didn't kill him.
And if you knew my character's backstory, it would make more sense.
Okay, that helps.
I mean, you got a guy who's basically has PTSD and has lost all status and ability and is struggling because, and by all rights, my character should be an alcoholic or something like that, because of betrayal like that. So I mean, it makes more sense with the character's backstory, which is why I was playing it that way.
Traveler,
Okay,
traveler. Frank's character drinks 3 times.
Yeah. Okay, I'll just remember to kind of stay away from you. I'll just stay in the engine room for a while.
That might be the safest.
Just don't try to sabotage me and ruin my entire existence. If you don't do that, won't have a
get along
problem.
great.
Yeah.
So, John, I'm kind of curious your thoughts on the whole side quest thing or whatever. I mean, can you you've played a lot of my campaigns, a lot of Jimmy's and Frank's. I mean, do you feel them coming?
Yeah, sometimes I do. And actually, my attitude is if you kind of drop the bait, I'll go for it. I do like to, because a lot of times it might be a case where you've come up with something and it's kind of neat and cool, and it's a diversion, and I like that. I like doing some of that stuff. Sometimes it's very, I don't know, it can kind of still get your character moving somewhere and doing something. And in terms of kind of like the D&D Monty Hall kind of aspect of it, there's a chance for rewards, either experience or gold or a magic item or something like that. And in other games, there's just story, and which I like. I mean, to me, I guess it's really about kind of telling a story, whether you're saying it's a group story effect or whatever. You're getting something extra out of it, and it's kind of fun and enjoyable. So I usually like to go for them. If it's you drop the bait, I'll go for it. I'm very simple like that, so I usually like to do that.
Let's hear the flip side of that, which is, from my perspective at least, Steven, is you have to almost cattle prod him to take any bait.
Oh yeah.
Or to talk.
Yeah. Oh geez.
But then when he does get started talking, God,
won't shut up.
Yeah, Steve's like, okay, you guys go on over there. I'm just going to stay on the ship, and I'm going to sit here and polish my armor.
he discusses.
But that's a pretty consistent response in a lot of your characters, Steve. So I'm just curious, what drives that a bit? I know it's not. What?
I don't like bait.
He doesn't fish.
But in all seriousness, it's okay to say I don't like bait, but that would suggest that there's a rails issue for you, right? You don't feel like you don't feel like you're being driven on a rail. So what creates the motivation in your particular case? Where John's the opposite. It's like, oh, sure, well, let's do that. Whereas you're like, no, I'm not into that. You're making me go a direction I'm not into that. Yet it's kind of necessary to move a story forward at some level. So I'm just curious, what would motivate you in this context, particularly something like a side quest, which is not part of the story, or not necessarily part of the story as we've identified?
An effective DM.
Well, that's fair, but again, you're not giving
some
me any
aloe for that. Holy cow!
Sorry, and I'm sitting here while you're talking, and I'm like, I've got one I can say on time. It's not going to be like this pregnant pause or anything. I'm just going to do it.
That's fair. But
no, it really
what makes an effective DM?
It wasn't fair.
In our next adventure, that body that's floating outside of your ship, Frank, it's going to be Steven's.
Well, I say that's fair because as somebody who has DM'd him a lot, most of the time I feel like an ineffectual DM a lot.
No.
Not in just the specific case of Steve, but more often than not, I assume whatever it is I'm doing is not working. So, and that's me as a GM. So that's why I say it's fair. But again, what would make someone an effectual GM in your particular case? How do you get somebody to get out of that particular protective zone?
So in our case, we also suffer from too much familiarity. So in our particular group, we have, fairly solidified roles when we play that we get into, and how we communicate with each other and how we interact with each other, how we murder together, how we skip down the lane carrying a basket.
How we paint the walls with blood.
Right. We still need to get a people or paint T-shirt.
Yeah.
We could talk about that.
That should be good for the podcast.
Yeah.
Paint.
I mean, boy, that'd be a horrifying tutorial.
Again, yet another side quest. I'm going to hold Steve to the fire a little bit, answering the question.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
In 100,000 words or less.
Oh, I'm going to put something in the margin to make it 100,001.
Of course you are.
Of course I am. But that's difficult. Baiting and prodding. Right. Baiting and prodding is easier, I think, when you're dealing with people that you aren't as familiar with, because it's a little easier to get carried away in the tide of the interactions and the action within the game than the camaraderie and the friendship of the people who are playing. And that may sound a little
I have a
weird.
question. When you said, did you mean game or podcast?
Well, it depends.
Okay, so how do you overcome that familiarity to do that? I mean, so this is a bit of a side quest in this conversation, because back to my psychopathy, is that a word? During the Last Traveler game, is that I felt that I was playing my character.
Nobody said you wasn't.
Well, let me finish what I'm saying here. I felt that I was playing my character, and a lot of the things that I'm doing in this particular campaign is based upon trying to portray that character. That character has a set of motivations that are decidedly different than Frank has. And so as a GM, I can see that it would be very challenging to try to think in terms of what motivates Frank the player as opposed to that particular character.
Well, that's why we call it role playing, right? I mean, we want to be somebody different, right? I mean, we want to be the cool badass Marine and stuff, because normally we get up and go into the office every Monday. We want to be exploring the galaxy or whatever, or digging around in a ogre's cave or satchel or whatever,
or a crotch.
So, but let me throw this one out to you, Stephen. So if you were the party leader, let's say, now by the nature of a side quest, it has to be optional, right? How else am I going to introduce the quest? And John's using bait, saying, okay, let's say I've got a little side quest planned at the starport, and it is a lady frantically says she's lost her child. What would you do in that case? That's a side quest, let's say. And I could have rolled up a random encounter in the back of the book, and I decided to wing it. I mean, what I'm getting at is, as a game master, you have two choices. One is you have somebody like captured and, against their will taken somewhere, and then they have to get out of it, or you have to voluntarily go somewhere. So, see my point? I mean, I could make a side quest that was that, but then to me, that just feels like I'm railroading someone if I have you captured and
and he's got a lot of experience with that.
It's out of your control. Let me put it that way. It's out of your player's control, your character's control. Somehow I'm going to put you in a situation you have to deal with. Now, that could be a side quest, but I think a side quest by nature should be voluntary and optional.
Right. So let me get this clear. Is your main question on how to motivate people to go to the side quest, or to motivate them to stay on the path of the core quest?
Well, my question is, you're kind of like, I don't like to be baited. My question is, you made the comment You made the comment, I don't like to be baited.
Right.
But how else as a game master, what's another way? What's
So
another way? I'm either going to throw it out there and say, here's a situation, you can do it or you can't, or I'm going to make it a situation in which you have no choice.
Right.
Now, a side quest to me, by definition, should be optional.
So you can use a side quest to bring someone back to the path of the core quest if the person is not following what you expect them or want them to do. So if you're looking at effectively keeping people on the path, you have to be aware enough of the story to be able to put options in front of them that you can then use to curve back to the original intent. So at no point in the Call of Cthulhu game did I feel that anything that we were doing wouldn't eventually curve back to what we really needed to do. And within that, there was a certain kind of freedom because of the robustness of the story that you were laying out that allotted me the ability to kind of create my own side quest by kind of going after and trying to ingratiate myself to one of the NPCs.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, to me, that's the way you got to run it. I mean, it cannot be a one-way street. A game master can't say, "Here, this is your adventure. Here's your monsters. This is what you kill." I mean, you have to always, because you are the type of player that you really are big on creating a character. As you play the game, you're always looking for something unusual, something unique is a better word for it. And, as a game master, I have to respond to that, because if I don't, I'm just like, she won't talk to you, and just move on and say, you guys need to go down here to this cave. Then you're like, well, crap, okay, let me kill the monster.
Then you're doing a dungeon crawl.
You're doing a board game.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, nothing wrong with that, but I get what you're saying. But again, to me, a side quest, I didn't have any side quests in my Call of Cthulhu campaign. I mean, to me, I was just reacting to what you guys wanted to do, because I didn't have a set adventure, with the exception of the cave, or I should say the tunnels under the city. I mean, I had that pre-planned, even though you guys didn't get to some of it. It was one whole big section I prepared. You guys never ever got there. That's fine, but then and the end, I had that kind of laid out, but they're going to get there eventually, and I had to say, this is a situation that's going to lead you into the forest to finally confront the boss, or whatever you want to call it. So, and draw the adventure to a conclusion. Other than that, I didn't have a lot planned out, other than try to follow your lead of where you want to go. But again, to me, a side quest would be something totally unrelated to that. I'll tell you what, a side quest in a way was that monster in the bookstore. You remember how I introduced all the characters? That is a side quest. That had nothing to do with what was going on in the game. It was a way for me to bring the group together initially.
That's a little... Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I think one of the ways to look at it is that like, as I said, for me, a lot of times you drop the bait, I'll go for it. Now that's as a player. So when the woman comes out and says, "Hey, someone's kidnapped my baby," I'll be like, "Sure, we'll go save it." If it's a case where my character specifically wouldn't do that. So if the bait's dropped and it roughly fits in with my character, I'm off. I'm like a terrier, with a toy or whatever. Sorry for the weird analogy there. But so, for me, you drop the bait, and it even, square peg, round hole. If I got a hammer, I'll make it fit, and we'll go do that. Where I think with Steven, it's more a case of it's only if it really kind of fits my character's mood that day, and this woman happens to kind of look like an old girlfriend, and I mean,
She burned
seriously,
my stuff and threw it out the window.
I think that's a very significant difference and stuff. And so on that note, I think what it gets down to is how do you get players to, jump through the hoop of continuing the main quest or going on a side quest or anything like that. For me, I think I am probably a very, agreeable player. For most GMs, he'll go, "Hey, that sounds fun. Let's do that. We might get killed, but kick ass. Let's do it. Let's have fun." where you have Steven, it's like, well, let me think about this. Tchaikovsky would have said,
The frustrating thing about...
Go ahead.
The frustrating thing about that is nothing wrong with that approach, except for it's pretty evident that Steven creates very elaborate backstories and conceptualizations of his character, which are awesome, but then he doesn't communicate any of them.
Exactly. I was going to bring that up, but that's exactly right.
So, you find out later, oftentimes I'll find out later, it goes, well, I didn't do this because of blah, blah, blah. I was like, what? I didn't know that character did that or had this connection or was important or whatever. Like,
I didn't know that character almost drowned when he was 12 years old while swimming with his little brother. You never told me that part.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a lot
I don't like to talk about it.
Well,
I'll tell you though. Let me put it this way: as a game master, I feel really, really warm and fuzzy inside when I have a character call me outside the group and outside the game and want to talk about what's going on with their character. And Steven would do that.
Yeah.
He would call and say, "This is something I want you to know, and this is something I want to do." And we would discuss it. And I did that with all you guys initially because
you said.
But anyway, just to say that he does really, really like to develop his character, and I like it. I try to, to.
Here's my question: you said Steven would do that. Did he do that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Steve, why are you calling Steve with the characters? But whenever I'm the J Master, all this stuff is in your head, and I got no idea what's going on. I have no. It's a closer phone call to call me. I mean, we could actually get together and have coffee or whatever and talk about it pre-pandemic. You don't communicate. It drives me nuts because there's walls a lot of times in your characters that if I knew about,
you're just not approachable, Frank.
That's fine. Again.
Right.
I get this is why I'm one of the many reasons I'm an ineffectual DM. I get that.
No.
I'm okay with that.
No.
This is one of the reasons I don't like to do it very much because I feel
we love
limited in this.
Okay, I'm going to bring this up because it is a side quest. In Fallout 76, there is a nanny robot, and she shows up in various locations, and she has little side quests, little things that don't really matter to the main quest that you can do. And she's recently been showing up in the Cranberry Glade area, and she wants to tell you a story. And you sit there and you just listen to the story. Well, the lady who does the voice acting for this nanny bot is amazing because she speaks in an overdone French accent. And it's wonderful because all of those little words, like, thank you, all of those words, she's using the overwrought, the O's and the rounded O's and all of that stuff. And it's amazing to listen to. And I've come across her twice now. And I've specifically just stayed just to listen to her tell a story about Hansel and Gretel and how they kill the witch. And it's fantastic. So French is on my mind. So I felt really bad about mispronouncing that word. I didn't really mispronounce it. I awkwardly pronounced it. So and there you go. Yes.
One thing I would like to find out, Stephen, it looks like you've been in a fist fight because one side of your glasses is missing and they're sitting askew on your face, so it's really hard to take you seriously.
Yes. I can't read. These broke, and
You don't say.
I didn't have my other ones down here, so I'm constantly trying to readjust it so they're straight.
That's
and
pretty good.
they always.
And you
but
say I
when
distract him. Did he
Okay,
finish
so-
what he was saying?
No,
All right,
he
so
didn't
the
even
deal
start
is
it.
the deal is side quests, and with me as a player, things. It may seem like I'm hard to motivate, but a lot of time I'm playing what the character would do. I don't play a character who goes squirrel and goes after that, or
Hey.
goes after the immediate thing, and so. The prompting and the prodding, has to be carried along if it's absolutely necessary by the DM. And if somebody's frustrated because I'm not taking subtle hints and clues, I probably understand that there's subtle hints and clues, but I'm waiting for something to happen that forces the issue. Because I want to do what the character would do. And if the character would do what lines up with the hint or the clue, I'm okay with it. If not, then that's not how I'm playing the character.
Well, that's fine, except for so much of the character is hidden to the GM.
Oh,
So and that becomes for me at least, a source of frustration because
Me too.
I could provide all of that you want fairly easily.
yes.
If I knew anything about it at all.
Yeah.
And the only character I have ever GM'd you in that I understood 100%, I know what this character is the murder bot. The rest of it,
Oh, the start, yeah.
yeah, that's
We all understand the murder bot.
Well, I mean, I understood it. I struggled with those characters because it's not how I work as a GM, but I understood what the motivations were. Every other character, again, it's after the fact. Well, this character, blah 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 blah. I'm like, I didn't know any of that stuff. If I had known that stuff, I could have put that in there.
I find Steve as a game master to be one of the more intriguing kind of guys to have in the group, just because he always comes up with something so unexpected.
Well, that's true. Yeah, I don't
With his
disagree with that.
background, and it's fun to try and incorporate that.
For sure.
To bring it to life.
I probably do a disservice to Jimmy, John, and Frank with my characters. Well, you didn't have to nod before I said characters, Jimmy. I mean, that was kind of wide open there. Just, you pick a topic. Yes, Steve, thanks. Disservice as a friend is, whatever. That's great. I appreciate that a lot. So
Material for your therapist.
yeah, like she needs more. Come on, the poor lady.
You know what's funny? These podcast sessions are almost like a therapy session about our role-playing games. It's like we're all getting it out in the open off our chest. I never knew that about you. Why did you not call me?
Back to the side quest thing, because that's what we're talking about.
Because that's supposed to be the subject.
That's supposed to be the subject. You know who does it best from like in television is Joss Whedon. Like if you look at Firefly, you got the overall campaign that he finally got to tell with that movie, the Serenity movie. But then you have like things like the Train Job, which is a great side quest, has nothing to do with the main story. And that's sort of what I think about Joss Whedon a lot when I'm designing my stuff and try to tailor some of my games after his style of storytelling because I think he's really good at it.
Rumor has it that Firefly is based on a Traveler campaign.
Drink.
Drink.
Take a drink. Traveler campaign that he ran when he was in college.
Huh.
Yeah. That's a rumor. I don't know. Is that true, Jimmy? Do you know?
I don't know, but I have heard that. He has not confirmed it.
It is
to the best
based.
of my knowledge.
He has confirmed it is based upon a role playing campaign, but he hasn't said what.
Exactly. But it's got to be Traveler, given the time
I mean, that
period.
seems to us. The only other options are things like Star Frontiers or something. But I mean, it's probably a safe bet it was Traveler.
Yeah, because Star Frontiers wasn't really all that.
So, I'm guessing that the way the game works is that if Steve O says Traveler, then it might be one of these cases that you only take one drink or half a drink maybe. If Jimmy says it, same thing. If I say it, then probably just be a drink, a full drink. If Frank says it, it might be 2 drinks. But if Steven says Traveler, it's like 5 or something crazy like that. The whole damn bottle.
You got to chug it. You have to kill the drink
right
there.
You have to kill the whole drink. So
Whatever it is.
Well, let me make up for that. Traveler.
Traveler.
Traveler. Hey, buddy.
All right. You should be feeling pretty good by now.
So
Let me just interject real quick. The disservice part that Jimmy was so eager to agree with without knowing where I was going.
Mew.
It son of a
God almighty.
Is that we have the joy and the problem of playing together so long that I think the last time that you guys fully understood a motivation outside of Murderbot was my Dragonlance character, because we knew what he was. And Jimmy, I don't think you ever played with that character.
Nope.
But, I could give you all more information. I don't think about it. I really don't. And I think the reason I don't think about it is because I'm just so familiar with the three of you. So
You just assume they kind of pick up on it, maybe.
Right. And I don't obfuscate, I don't sequester these little details away at all. I just
this is how this
quietly
plays
explain.
out. This is how this plays out for me, okay? And this has to do with group dynamics. And this is not exactly related to side quest, but sure, what the heck, we'll keep going with it.
It's a side quest.
There you go. I know John is going to follow along with the general beat of the drum. He's going, all right, let's go that way. Sure, because that's what you said. And I know that's going to happen. I know Jimmy is going to find the humor in whatever it is. So long as it's funny to him, he'll do that. So I trust he will find a funny way to enjoy that. I have zero idea how to motivate your characters ever. So I sort of assume that you'll find some way to reconcile whatever it is you got in your head with whatever's happening. And then you'll do things. That's what I sort of assume. And as a player, I find it more frustrating than as a GM. Because as a GM, I just go, I have figured it out. I don't care. Which is terrible. I feel bad about that as a GM. But as a player, it's kind of like, well, no, we're setting up, we're doing this, and you're doing that. What the heck's going on? That I actually found it more frustrating as a player. Now, when it comes to Steve-O, I've only GM'd him and played with him in the last 6 weeks. I literally never played with Steve-O as a player in all the years that we've been playing together until basically this, we've been playing online the last, couple months.
Well, it's like I told you, I'm a terrible player. Yeah. I've played more in the past, 3 months than I've played for years and years. I mean, I usually run the games. Usually the way it worked in the past, before we started using these online tools, is I would come up with a cool traveler idea and or something, and I would call you guys up and say, hey, I'm coming up to Morgantown. Do you guys want to game a couple nights? And that's how it would work for a long time.
Well, actually, we did play. I did run one campaign with you one night.
Oh, that was terrible.
Years ago. Two campaigns years ago. And both scarred me terribly.
Yeah, sorry about that.
The one, and this is where I really started thinking about motivations of characters to sort of pull it back. The one in particular was I had made what I was pretty proud of as an interesting hook into a post-apocalyptic world. And basically, you're looking at me weird. You can't see this, listeners. You're looking at me weird like you don't remember this at all.
I don't remember post-apocalyptic thing. Keep going.
Okay,
I remember the semen. I remember that.
Well, that was just... Steven, you weren't there in either of these cases, I don't think. I've always liked the idea of playing a campaign on the high seas, as it were. And so I had made this campaign that was actually river based. So I was kind of thinking like the Mississippi River type of thing. I thought that would be kind of interesting as a setting. And for whatever reason, somebody latched onto the word seaman,
Steve-O.
which isn't true because in this particular case, they were riverboat men. So it was even more frustrating because everybody kept talking about seaman, which is the wrong word for the setting to start with.
But admittedly more fun.
It was more fun. It was hilarious, but it was...
Well, again, I apologize for that. That's what I told you. I'm an awful player, but I'm getting better. I think you are.
But we did this one campaign where I came up with this idea for a post-apocalyptic world where I wanted something so that, and I stole this concept a bit from you, Steve-O, that the idea, actually that's not true. I stole it from John, who stole it from you, that you're sort of a futuristic person who wakes up in a vault and then sees this post-apocalyptic world, right? And you've got to kind of adapt to it. And I'm sure you took that from, dozens and dozens of science fiction that's existed.
Yeah, well, you call that a corpsicle story, by the way.
Right, there you go. So the way I did that was I invented a world where there was a colony on Mars, and you guys were actually Martians, and it was necessary that you got supplies from Earth, contact from Earth, and what ended up happening was that got broken off, and it took a couple 100 years for you to generate the necessary materials to fly back to Earth. And you guys were the expedition that was flying back to Earth. And what had happened in the interim, there was a nuclear war and destruction and all that sort of stuff. And so that was the setup that I had came up with. And it took hours to get you people to land. And the only way that I could get it to happen was your ship just crashed, which was awful.
That's the way I would have done it right off the bat.
I know, but
going back.
It was awful because I was really trying to avoid the rails thing, and that was the only other two times that I played with you as a
Jimmy,
player.
make an engineering roll, and he's like, "Hey, I rolled a 2. Oh no, make it a hard roll. Okay, you succeeded with that, but life support's going down. Make another roll. Eventually, somebody's going to miss a roll.
Why did we have to get a Chevy?
I do kind of remember that. Yeah. Sorry about that one too. So,
but anyway, so I as a GM, I find that I more often than not try to motivate the party, knowing the propensities of the particular players, and that's kind of
basically just
how I end
murder.
up. Well, yeah, I mean, you end up with that a lot. I mean, that's
murder and treasure.
Well,
mostly murder. Mostly.
I mean, some of it's looking at
mostly
how Jimmy runs campaigns and realizing what he does that I just don't feel comfortable to do. So a lot of his campaign motivations, I'm like, oh, I see where you're doing this and how this is going. It's just not something I feel comfortable to do.
Murder.
So I go and I go, okay, well, I can't really do that as well. Let me try doing this a little bit better.
Well, everybody's got a different style, man.
Yeah.
I mean, the game you were running, lots of fun. I mean, we have no idea what's going on in this world. I think that's.
I was hoping somebody was
interesting.
going to drown the last time. It came close.
Oh, it probably would have been me because I almost drowned.
Yeah, I made a roll.
Times, so. Yeah, me too, barely.
So, anywho. We've definitely got off on a side tangent about side quests. So let's try to wrap up our thoughts on side quests a little bit, shall we?
Sure.
I think if I can summarize what Steve-O was essentially saying is that side quests they're optional. You don't use them a whole heck of a lot most of the time. Mostly they're just kind of encounters or part of the main quest.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
I think that's fair.
I think it should be. I would not consider anything that was part of the main quest a side quest. I mean, maybe it's an optional part of the main quest, but again, I think the key would be optional. That it's not required to complete the campaign.
Yeah.
And then, Steven, if I can sort of encapsulate what you've been saying, is that a side quest can be a useful ad-lib tool within the context of the main quest. Is that, okay, you can use this to sort of feed it back in and accentuate or highlight a particular point.
Or pick the pace up, too.
And for those people who can't hear Steven nod, he just nodded to
He
confirm.
agreed.
I didn't want to interrupt. I wasn't going to interrupt him asking me, so I thought I would just preempt it with a nod.
Yeah, that's what a nod sounds like, that long moment of silence.
Yeah.
So, the way, in a computer role-playing game, generally, side quests are just a way for your character to get a little bit extra experience or to get some extra treasure. I mean, that's really what it is in a computer role-playing game. But like in a one-on-one tabletop setting, really it kind of amounts to the same kind of thing, either like some extra experience, or kind of like in Frank's terms, like maybe a tread water setting, possibly, to get extra treasure, extra experience, whatever. But I think it usually ends up being a really good way, like in terms of Steven's thing, it's actually an interesting way to get a different bent on, a different view of the character. So if you can at least figure out what is Steven's motivation. Okay, let me see if I can throw something out here that, he went for it. Oh my God. Finally. I only had to do that 32 times to get him to go for it. So.
But I think maybe what you're talking about is like character development.
Right.
We all want to, like, we just started playing, I just joined Jimmy's campaign. I know you guys have played it for a while. So, I'm still filling my guy out, right? I'm still trying to figure out who he is.
Seaman.
And all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, side quest is perfect because, so you have something you can conclude very quickly, maybe in a night, right? A little side quest. And
yeah, to keep with the theme of wrapping it up, I'm just going to throw out really quickly the only things I need to throw out there.
I did want to.
I
do want a character. So let me just make sure I can finish my characterization. So, John, you would just say it's another thing to do.
Yeah, generally. I mean, it's.
And just for your let's do that.
Yeah.
That'd be full. Let's just do that. That's awesome. We'll do that. That has
for me, a lot of times
that's kind of interesting.
I mean, part of it ends up being to kind of ad lib more into this, but before, I mean, I've had a lot of characters that have not died. I have played for a long time and never had a character die. And so it's really kind of funny for me was that I was actually
challenge accepted.
Well, I mean, it's happened now. It's already over. No, but the point was that kind of broke the seal on that one, as it were. But the issue was that when we played previously, I was somewhat risk averse. And so, it is very freeing to have a character die. And so, I don't know if anyone has noticed, but a lot of times, especially like when we did some stuff when we've been playing with Andrew, I'm like, sure, let's go do that. Or I'll go and put it on my head or whatever. I'm just more, do it. Let's just do it. Oh, I died. Oh, well. Roll up another character and go.
See, it's not that bad.
It's fun.
I would like to point out that I'm the only player that's had a character die in Andrew's campaign.
Yeah.
So you guys were captured.
Yeah.
I'm a whole new man.
We were practically dead, but not completely. And Jimmy, your point of view, actually, I find the most difficult to sum up.
A side quest are one of just a couple of things. I like, really, my favorite is what you characterized as the tread water campaign, but because that's a really good way to put it, and that's probably what I use most often. And then the second would be in those cases where either you're not picking up the hook or you are picking up you don't want to pick up the hook for the main campaign. Then it's a way to keep the game fun and go in a direction the players want to go. And then last is, for new players who are just picking up the game, a way to introduce them to the game and show them how combat works, that kind of thing. So that's what I would sum up a side quest for me, those three things.
Yeah, I think that last one in particular is something that you're relatively unique in having done a lot, just because of your experience with the Boy Scouts. I imagine there's a lot of new players that you're introducing to the concept. I mean, I don't think I've introduced somebody to role playing in decades. I mean, it's just, everybody I've played with are familiar with it, that's not necessary.
Yeah. And if you're a new player and you're trying to get into it and find side quests, there's now a lot of places out there that are specifically designed for side quests. Like, there is a company called SideQuest that produces side quests you can get on Drive-Thru RPG. They're really inexpensive. And then there's this new thing that's a Kickstarter. Dice Dungeons, I think, is the name of the company that put out this Kickstarter of side quest cards. Now, I haven't seen them, but that sounds pretty interesting to me.
I have seen that.
Have you seen those?
Well, yeah, there's actually, I'm trying to think, I was just perusing some other main game system, and they had some kind of little card thing for something similar. I'm trying to think of what that was, but anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, so you can pick those up at Kickstarter. Just look for the Dice Dungeons quest cards, or go on Drive-Thru RPG. That's a really good place just to find all kinds of supplies. We don't get any kickbacks from these guys. It's just a place I go. And you can pick up all kinds of stuff for side quests for various games. If you're new and getting started, or if you're been around for a long time and just looking for some new gear to pick up.
Yeah. And, if you are a new game master and you think it sounds like fun, just usually in your main core rule book, there'll be random encounter tables and stuff. Just take it to the next level. The ogre example, something like that. Have a random encounter and then just take it a little further. Wing it a little bit. Give it a try. Like Stephen pointed out in the early days, that was an expected thing for sure.
Yeah, root around in an ogre satchel.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's just some of our thoughts on side quests. We didn't talk we didn't talk a lot about side quests in depth. I mean, we didn't talk about the issue of how that differs from a one shot or something like that. So there's a lot of other aspects of side quests that we could talk about. If you have any general thoughts or comments, you can reach us at the contact information coming in a second.
And done. Mew.
That's all we have for this week. Thanks for spending time with us. Please leave a review and comments wherever you listen. It helps others find the show. If you have topic suggestions or would like to get in touch, you can reach us at roleplaygeeks@roleplaygeeks.com. Head on over to the website for an archive of all our previous shows, as well as links to all our social media channels. Thanks again, and we'll catch you next week.